Okay.
Does it matter how I start it?
Just introduce yourself. My name's Charle Hefferan, and this is my comparison of Red Dragon and Manhunter, or whatever we'll do.
Nice.
Just come find me when you're done.
Is it recording now?
Yeah, I'll just lock the beginning off. But, yeah, just take your time, go very pace. Good luck.
Cheers. Hello, my name is Charle Hefferan, and this is my comparison of Manhunter and Red Dragon. Manhunter was made in 1986 and is basically about a villain named Francis Dolarhyde who goes around killing families. And to stop him, the FBI sent an agent called Will Graham, who had actually retired because of a traumatic experience whilst trying to find a cannibal who turned out to be Hannibal Lecter. In order to solve this case, Will Graham had to actually go and see Hannibal in order to get his expertise, because even though he's insane, he's a very smart man, and they got his help on solving the case. In exchange, because Hannibal is a psychopath, usually they'd have to offer some form of, exchange, like returning of book privileges or something. And and so the serial killer was so hard to catch that they actually needed to ask for his help. Francis Dolarhyde is nicknamed the Tooth Fairy for his, he tends to bite his victims when he kills them, and he doesn't just kill people, he kills families, like he kills whole families. And as the film goes on, you find out that he actually has a split personality. He has a tattoo on his back of something called the Red Dragon, and he says that it's the Red Dragon that is telling him to kill people, kill these families, and that he's picking the victims. When in reality that isn't true. He was actually abused by a sadistic grandmother when he was a child, which messed up his brain. The movie is a thriller, but it's got elements of horror in it, and crime and things like that. And it's directed by Michael Mann, and who has also directed other big films such as The Collateral and The Insider. As you can see, there is a video there, link to click on, a trailer of the film. And the remake, Red Dragon, is essentially the same movie, except it's just updated. It's got new actors, it's got a few new elements in it. One new thing that's in the remake is at the end, there's a false ending where you think that Francis Dolarhyde is dead, but he actually ends up faking his own death and returning to try and kill Will Graham. This doesn't happen in the original. This doesn't happen. The remake is directed by Brett Ratner, and he has also directed other films such as Rush Hour, the Rush Hour film series, and X-Men: The Last Stand, plus many others. And there is also a YouTube link of the trailer for that. Some interesting financial facts about Manhunter is that it had a budget of $15 million when they were making it, but at box office it only made back around approximately $8.6 million, which is actually a loss of a loss of $7 million, and therefore the gross margin is -81% and the markup is -47%. The widest release of Manhunter was the 779. The widest release of Manhunter was 779 movie theatres, and was number 8 in the box office. On the opening weekend of its release, it made approximately $2.2 million, and the domestic gross, as I said before, was around $8.6 million. Despite initially having a low gross on the release, it actually, in the later years, it became a bit of a cult film, and it increased in popularity as time went on. So, actually, it ended up making all its money back anyway. A lot of the reason for this was due to films like The Silence of the Lambs. People watched that and it was like, oh, there was a Manhunter years ago. Let's watch that. It's interesting. And then Red Dragon it had a significantly higher budget. $778 million, and in the box office it grossed around $209 million, which is massive compared to Manhunter. That's just like a sign of the times. Like film's bigger now than it was back then. And there's generally more money going into things now, as what there was before. and so it made a gross profit of $131 million, and the gross margin was 63%, and the markup was 168%. The widest release of Red Dragon was 3,363 theatres on the open weekend of its release, and it grossed, and the domestic gross overall was around $93 million. The film generally made good reviews, but the critics who had watched Manhunter said they wasn't sure whether it would shock people, because it wasn't really too different apart from the end and the start. A lot of the film was the same. I personally preferred Red Dragon a lot, but that's just what the critics said. Technologies of production. In the original, Michael Mann used many different frame rates in his film, including 24, 36, 72 and 90 frames per second. The cameras used in Manhunter were a Reflex 35 BL3 and a Zeiss Super Speed lenses. During the production of this film, the actor who played Francis Dolarhyde, Tom Noonan, made the rest of the cast address him as Francis while they were actually filming. He did this because he wanted to really become the character, and Tom Noonan actually said that a lot of the other cast were actually a bit frightened of him when they were doing it, because he was obviously, Francis is a bodybuilder, so he was increased in size. So I reckon it would have been pretty freaky for the people that were working alongside him. And then the cameras used in Red Dragon were Panavision Panaflex cameras and Panavision Primo, and the C- and E- lenses. Distribution and exhibition. Manhunter was released on the 15th of August 1986, and Red Dragon was released on September the 30th, 2002. Red Dragon received a much wider audience. This is because film, as I said, is generally bigger nowadays. The promotion is better. There was a lot of good actors in it. Like Anthony Hopkins and Ralph Fiennes, both very big actors. And obviously the internet as well. You can promote it much better. Trends in the 1980s. Some of the trends involved with the film, that was going on at the time in terms of Manhunter was there was many different genres of film coming out back then. So it was there wasn't really a specific trend. I guess maybe you could say a lot of family movies. I looked through a list of movies that were coming out. They seemed like they were sort of aimed at families who could just go and watch it together. So Manhunter didn't really fit that mould, but because Manhunter's an 18, so and then Red Dragon came out in 2002, and there were a lot of films at that time about kind of like wizards, like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter were coming out at the time, and they were massive. And for Red Dragon to be such a big film at the time, even though it was including none of those elements, was actually quite a good achievement. There was also a lot of sci-fi coming out at the time, and it was still immensely popular. And the highest worldwide gross of 2002 actually went to Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. Some more trends. These are some films that I thought were similar to Manhunter, which come out at the time. To Live and Die in LA, The Cell, and Seven. Right, so the cast. In the 1986 Manhunter version, William Peterson played Will Graham. Will Graham's the FBI agent, the man at the front, the guy they brought back from retirement to go and solve the case. Tom Noonan played Francis Dolarhyde, the main villain. Dennis Fariner played Jack Crawford. Kim Grace played Molly Graham, that's Will Graham's wife. Brian Cox played Hannibal Lecter, the antagonist, and Joan Allen played Raven McLean, and Stephen Lang played Freddie Lowndes. And in the 2002 version, they got Edward Norton to play Will Graham, Ralph Fiennes to play Francis Dolarhyde, Harvey Keitel to play Jack Crawford, Mary Louise Parker to play Molly Graham, Anthony Hopkins to play Hannibal Lecter, Emily Watson to play Raven McLean, and Frank Whaley to play Freddie Lowndes. In terms of star comparison, I thought Francis Dolarhyde, the differences between the characters were that I really felt with the 2002 version that you really felt that he was a messed up individual, whereas in Manhunter you kind of just felt like he was just a villain. You know, there wasn't really a backstory. So what I liked about Red Dragon is they actually showed you the start, like what happened to Will Graham before, and it gave the movie more of a sense of depth. And I didn't really feel they captured that with Francis Dolarhyde in Manhunter. Tom Noonan, you know, some other movies that Noonan starred in were The X-Files, Law and Order, and CSI. Ralph Fiennes is a massive name, bigger than Tom Noonan in the film industry. He's played one of his biggest roles was playing Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter, the final 3 movies or 4 movies, which is obviously huge. Ralph Fiennes also starred in Schindler's List as a character called Amon Goth. He said that this role had a disturbing effect on him, probably due to some of the things that he found out about what went on back there and the general characteristics he had to take on. And yeah, I just felt overall that Ralph Fiennes was more convincing. Maybe this is due to the improved kind of technology, you know, acting skills nowadays. You know, they know more about people now. So, but I still felt that the Tom Noonan version was very good, and maybe a bit more freaky. You know. The next one I chose was Hannibal Lecter. You know, a massive, you know, fictional villain. Brian Cox played him in Manhunter. And he's also starred in some other big films like Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Troy, and TV series such as Doctor Who and Frasier. Anthony Hopkins is massive as well, and he starred in The Mask, Zorro, The Elephant Man, amongst many others. And again, I thought that in the Red Dragon version, Hannibal Lecter's character was portrayed a lot better. You know, I really felt like the Anthony Hopkins version is someone I would actually be a bit kind of like fearful if I met them. I really want to meet him. Whereas, you know, I felt with the Red Dragon version, it was just like another villain. Maybe it's just a different style. I don't know. You know, I just prefer the way they did it in Red Dragon. But I really felt the character. You could really see the sinister side to him. You know, and it felt real. You know. Next one I chose to do was Will Graham, the main hero, if you like. You know, the guy that solves the crime. William Peterson, this guy here, played him in Manhunter, and he's also acted in To Live and Die in LA, which is also a thriller, and the CSI series. Edward Norton, who played him in Red Dragon, has also starred in Fight Club, The Italian Job, and The Incredible Hulk. You know, 2 big actors. I couldn't really decide who I liked better out of these 2. I thought they was both very good. I felt Will Graham, you kind of, like in the Red Dragon version, you kind of got that feeling that he could really put himself in the villain's shoes. I didn't really get that feeling so much with Manhunter, but I kind of got the feeling he was more of a serious person in Manhunter, just very kind of distant, you know. With the Red Dragon version, I really saw that kind of empathetic side to him. But I definitely like both of those. I couldn't really say which one I like better. In terms of the social, political and regulatory factors, I felt one of the massive things that they wanted to capitalise on with this film was society's, you know, fascination with villains. You know, like everyone loves a bad guy. And I think they wanted to make a bad guy which seemed real. You know, you see other movies like, you know, Batman, like superheroes, where it's kind of like, you know, that's never going to be real. With this one, I feel they wanted to make someone who was going to be real, you know. And this way, it would send out a stronger message, because people are like, whoa, like, there's actually people like this out there, like, you know. And I think one of the most important messages that was sent out by this to society was how if you get abused at a young age, it can really affect your brain. You know, because Francis Dolarhyde was abused by his grandmother, who was a sadistic person, and it just, you know, it turned him into crazy. You know, deep down, he was probably just a very sad, lonely person. You know, he probably just needed some support. But you know, he just drove him insane, and he kind of struggled to really understand what was going on in that head. But I think it just wanted to spread awareness. It shows society that this thing is real. And I think it's important to like realise that if Francis hadn't been abused, he would have been normal. You know, like I think that's a distinction that you would understand when you watch the film, because people who grew up with a loving family, they'll realise like the world isn't out to get them and stuff. Like they're not alone, and it just shows you how literally someone else can just affect a kid's life like forever. Like one thing you do, you know, a couple of things you do to a kid at a young age can just affect them when they grow up. You know, it kind of makes you feel sorry for them. And also, I felt that a political issue that was addressed in the film that could have been an issue, you know, is how the FBI agents used Hannibal Lecter as, you know, like to assist them in the case. I thought that was kind of strange. If that sort of thing happened in real life, it'd be kind of risky, because Hannibal Lecter is actually a psychopath, and if you're not strong mentally, he can easily manipulate you. And this is shown in the movie, because when during the movie, Hannibal Lecter actually manipulates the phone, so he could, like, they give him a phone call, and he rings someone else to get information about Will Graham, and he ends up telling Francis Dolarhyde where Will Graham lives, so he can go kill him. Now you can see, if they had never got Hannibal involved in the case, that would never have happened, and actually Will Graham almost died at the end of the movie. In Red Dragon, he almost died at the end of the movie, because Francis turns up at his house, you know. But I thought it was weird, you know, really strange, you know. I know he's smart, but it's very risky. You know, I thought if this actually happened in real life, there could potentially be a lot of people. You know, people wouldn't like it. Yeah. In terms of the synergies between the films, I felt that the remake. In terms of synergies, the remake has a false ending, and it has a start. Like at the start, it shows you a little bit of Will Graham's past, and the Manhunter doesn't do this. Manhunter's just like it's sent totally in the present. You know, there's no past or future elements to it. It's just like what's happening now. That's what I felt gave Red Dragon a lot more depth. You know. Also, in the remake, Will Graham's wife Molly kills Francis Dolarhyde, whereas in the original, Will Graham does it. You know, in the remake, he turns up at that house and he actually has Will Graham's son with a piece of glass. You know, that's one of his trademarks. Francis Dolarhyde, he smashes mirrors and uses glass to cut people. And he has Will Graham's son, and he's going to cut him. And it turns out, and they end up in like a fight. You know, they're shooting each other, they have guns, and Molly ends up shooting. She ends up shooting Francis. Whereas in the original, none of that actually happens, because the false ending doesn't happen. Everything happens in this one scene where Francis Dolarhyde has like a blind woman that he's been seeing hostage, and basically the police turn up. Francis shoots them, and then Will Graham turns up and shoots Francis Dolarhyde. I felt. One of the things I felt between the films is that the violence was a lot more realistic in the remake. You know, there was just one scene in Manhunter where Will Graham gets annoyed at a reporter and he throws him over a car, and I was watching it thinking like, he's not that strong. Like he couldn't do that. He couldn't throw him over a car. And the guy wasn't small. You know, he was a fairly large person, and he threw him over a car. I thought it was weird. Like it felt kind of strange. Whereas in the remake, the same scene happens, but in the remake, instead of throwing over a car, he just pins into a car, which I thought was very realistic. You know, and a lot of the explosions, like the fire at the end on Red Dragon was realistic. I feel a lot of this is because of the increased technology. You know, so that's not necessarily, you know, the director's fault who did Manhunter. In terms of vertical and horizontal integration, the original was produced by the Laurentiis Entertainment Group. The remake was produced by Universal Pictures. The producer of the original was Richard A. Roth, whilst Dino De Laurentiis, produced Red Dragon. Dino De Laurentiis has also produced films such as Hannibal Rising, which is Hannibal Rising is basically a movie where Hannibal is the main villain. Like he's antagonist in this, but he's the main villain in that. And he's also made Evil Dead 2. As an overview of these two films, I would say that I thought Red Dragon was the best one. I liked Red Dragon. I felt Manhunter was a little bit hard to get into. You know, like, I was watching it. I was like, I found it hard to like buy into what I was looking at. Like, it's just a film. Whereas with Red Dragon, I thought like, yeah, this is a good film. You know, I feel a lot of that's because of the way it's done. The start was massive. I love films where it shows you a bit of the past and it comes to the present like it has depth. You know, I love that. And that kind of like caught my attention right at the start. You know. I was also more convinced by the villains in Red Dragon. I thought there was a lot more. It was you really see the dark, lonely side to them. You know, where they're just twisted individuals. Whereas in Manhunter, I just felt it was a bit more just like any old villain really. There's no depth to them. There's no like backstory. You know, they could have been born that way. You know, for all I know. Which takes a lot of the legitimacy away from it. I also felt, you know, like if someone said to me, "Are the villains real in Red Dragon?" I could see that. I could see it in Manhunter. I just felt it was a lot better effect, you know, in Red Dragon. I also liked it. Yeah, so I also like the start. You know, not only with Will Graham at the start, but also Hannibal Lecter. It shows you how he used to like sneakily eat people. Like, you know, at the start of the movie, he's having dinner with people and he's feeding them human flesh, and they don't know it. And one of the people says to him, you know, "What is this meat? Like, it's really nice." And he says, "If I told you, you wouldn't even try it." And it's just like, oh, sneaky, you know. And basically, and that's the two movies. They're both rated 3.5. That's the front cover. Also, another thing with the characters, I thought Francis Dolarhyde. He has the tattoo on the front in Manhunter, but on the back in Red Dragon. So that's what I'm keeping. Okay, so and that's my presentation on Red Dragon and Manhunter. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you can see the differences. And thanks for listening.
good?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I don't know how to stop it. Right, like, don't want to delete it or anything.
Yeah.
So it's still recording now?
Yeah.
Hello.
Let's go.
Maybe. Okay.
You press that.
You could do this one maybe.
That.
No, I've done it Shrewsbury. So remember
It's the same button you press at the start.
you could argue it might have an effect on people wanting to be violent or